And now, Spotlight Montana with Laurel Staples.
Welcome, everyone. In this Spotlight Montana, we welcome back award-winning Montana author Brian D'Ambrosio. In this segment, he talks about some of Montana's most notorious murders from his new book, any new information he's uncovered, and what he's working on next. Here's Brian D'Ambrosio. What cases stand out to you the most?
I think the cases that stand out to me the most are the ones in Livingston and Montana. And I've talked extensively with other people about the cases that are in the book in Livingston. There's a series of unsolved murders in the Livingston area that have besieged Livingston and plagued Livingston from about the mid 1980s to about the early 2000s. And I'm still, working on some other stories about that time frame and that time period. And in early March of about March of 2020, I was planning on organizing a forum with community leaders and family members to really delve into and or acknowledge a series and a slew of unsolved murders in the Livingston area from the mid 1980s to the early 2000s. So I had planned on organizing with some other people a forum, almost like a truth and reconciliation commission, where we could acknowledge some of these deaths. And that got postponed, but that might be something that we'll be doing again in the future. So the idea is to invite the new sheriff. Maybe he can go back and look at some of these other cases. And also, I've talked to the county attorney, the new county attorney in Park County, about delving into some of these older cases as well. But I thought about having, a forum. There's about 7 or 8 of them that I've been working on looking into. 3 of them are in the book. A few that haven't been published yet, and 1 has been published after the book came out. So I think the biggest surprise to me are those cases in the Livingston area. So I tried to focus on those cases in the book, and a few of them are pivotal cases, in the book.
And what are some of those that are pivotal?
Well, the Nelson McNair case in 1995. We have also have Amy Johnson, and also have Sheila Jordan. So there are 3 distinct cases, 3 distinct people. Amy Johnson has disappeared after going out on a date. She was last seen by her roommate, and that was in 1986. She's never been seen since. Nelson McNair was found in the Yellowstone River in 1995. He was a young man who has a case that has never been, I think, adequately explained. And in the book, and I get into Nelson McNair's story in the book, is that Nelson has never gotten appropriate and adequate attention, I think, from law enforcement. So as I mentioned, I was writing some of those stories before the book, and in the process of writing the book and still researching some of these cases, I've been able to push and propel some of these to be reinvestigated and reopened, and that's one of them. So Nelson McNair is in the book, and Amy Johnson, and also Sheila Jordan, who was murdered right outside of the market there in Livingston, just a few blocks from her home. She was walking home one evening from work, and there are suspects in all 3 cases, and especially with Amy Johnson and Sheila Jordan, there are very good suspects, and I think I've released the names of the suspects in 2 out of the 3 cases. And I think with Sheila Jordan, it's more a question of why wasn't there an arrest, and as opposed to the mystery of who might have done it.
So any new information in these cases, any progress being made?
In Nelson McNair's case, so Nelson died in 1995, and the coroner has refused to label his death a homicide, and he's still the current coroner. So the coroner in 1995 is still the coroner today, and I think we've made some progress by taking Nelson's story and writing about it and putting it in the book and gathering information. I've contacted the Park County attorney and the Park County Sheriff about reopening the case and delving back into it. And I provided all the information, all the material that I was able to come up with, and gave it to the Park County attorney, and she made a referral to the Department of Criminal Investigation, Helena, to have that case reopened and re-examined. So in early February, I think it was March of 2020, the Department of Criminal Investigation, Helena, contacted Nelson's family, and they were contacting Nelson's friends, and they are going to analyze and scrutinize what happened to Nelson McNair, perhaps for the very first time. And so the idea is to take some of these cases and get them out of the county that they're in and get them away from the people who have been holding the files for all these years, and to push and nudge the case in a different direction, and usually outside of a new jurisdiction, to have it re-examined and reinvestigated with new eyes. So in Nelson's case, Nelson McNair's case, the Department of Criminal Investigation, Helena, has two agents who are now actively looking into Nelson's case, and I think that was the goal, and that was the aim and the objective of the story, and even writing the book, was to have these cases reinvestigated and re-examined. So it's a small step in the right direction.
You also highlight a case that really hits home for me, especially in this profession. It's the unsolved murder of Jennifer Servo in 2002 from Columbia Falls, and just, launching her career as a reporter, moves to Texas for a new job. And share with us what you know about this case.
Well, yeah, that's another tough story. It's a hard story to write and a hard story to read. And coincidentally or incidentally, Jennifer's father and I know one another, and we've had a relationship, and a friendly relationship. And I think it's heartbreaking, and it's gut wrenching to think about where she would be now, what would have happened to her, and where she'd be, because the world needs people like Jennifer, and she was smart, intuitive, capable, ambitious, and it seems that she had met someone who was not a good person. That person's been identified as a person of interest and a suspect, and his name is attached to the story, and it remains unsolved. Her case seems more likely than not just a case where it just wasn't put together. I mean, the material and the evidence might not have been strong enough for prosecution, but law enforcement has been fairly open and transparent about who they think is the suspect, and the suspect has been named. So I think putting that person's name back out there is not a bad idea, and I've done that, and I think that was the goal too, is just to keep pushing these things, keep driving them, and hopefully somewhere, someplace, somehow somebody slips, or some new information is obtained or derived from one of these stories.
Your book also includes several solved cases out there. What are some of those?
Wow. So that, there's some of the, I thought one of the interesting things about the book would be taking some old stories, some historical stories, and re-examining them and sharing them. And the further we get away from things, maybe the more enjoyable things can be. Like there's a story about Dynamite Ike Gravely, who was a precursor essentially to the Unabomber who terrorized the railroad industry in the Helena area, more than 100 years ago. So I think taking a story like that, it almost seems, comical or benign compared to the Unabomber's reign. But so I took some older stories, of course, the death of labor leader Frank Little. There's also a couple other stories in there about a reporter from Thompson Falls who ended up killing a politician on the streets because she was offended by a comment that he made to her. So the interesting thing about that story is that she had killed the politician on the streets because she felt that he had said something to her that offended her. She apparently had gone back to the newspaper office and mention that the situation, that there was an argument, and the newspaper office, like her editor and her publisher, were of a different political persuasion. They didn't like the guy who made the comment. So in essence, they applauded her and they encouraged her to go shoot the guy on Main Street. And she did. So there's a lot of stories in there that are so wacky and so crazy. They seem surreal, and those are more enjoyable because there's so much time has passed, and I think there's less of an edge when you have a case that's been solved. I mean, I think the unsolved ones are the ones that are the most unnerving. So the ones that are solved, I don't know, maybe we're just a little more comfortable with because there's been resolution. But some of them are historical accounts from Montana's early Wild West history, and some are contemporary accounts as well.
You mentioned some that you refer to as wacky. There is this one that I spotted: the Butte pastor killed by Korean Army, and fascinating.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah, that's a little known nugget, or from Montana history about Father Magan, who was from Butte and who was killed by the Red Army. So I thought that there were some other interesting ones that a lot of people forget about: the murder of Patrick Duffy's parents in the tavern in Boulder too, and that reverberated throughout that community and still does today. So I think there are some that have been completely have been forgotten, and there are some little known cold cases that still haunt survivors and families to this day. So I think there's enough of a variety and a sampling as far as the stories go to make the book compelling and interesting.
Did you find any common thread out there with the unsolved cases, or maybe with the solved ones?
Yeah, I think the common thread as far as the unsolved cases is that the information, it's there somewhere, and I think the more you dig, like the surface appearance is much different from the essence beneath the appearance, and I think the more you look and the more you come back and the more persistent you are, you will find a new detail, you will find an inconsistency, and I think the more comfortable people are with you, the more they'll keep talking and the more they'll share. And I think, it's remarkable how many people may not have ever been asked a certain question or have information that they're harboring, and they've been harboring for a long time, and they're just waiting to share it and divulge it and reveal it. So, for example, with the death of Nelson McNair, the coroner, Al Jenkins, has always stated that there wasn't enough evidence for him to make a determination whether it was homicide or whether it was an accidental drowning. After several months, I finally found the person or the people who had a look at his body, who discovered the body. There were a couple of fishermen who found the body, and I also found the property owner who located him, who found Nelson's body, and they confirmed that the Nelson's hands had been tied behind his back, and he had a hole in his head that was consistent with being shot. So that's information that is contrary to the official report as far as the Nelson McNair case, and goes against a lot of the coroner's public statements. I also found many people who were told by the coroner that Nelson's death was a homicide. So you have the coroner who's publicly telling people, or publicly, saying that he can't make a determination. He has no knowledge of what happened to this kid. It's baffling. It looks like a drowning. It does look suspicious, but he can't make a ruling or a determination one way or the other. So he's saying this publicly. He's saying that to the media, but privately, I found a number of people who he confided in, and he told that Nelson had been murdered. In fact, I found a number of people who the coroner had told had used Nelson as a warning, saying to them, you might not want to talk about this or you'll end up like Nelson McNair. So all of this stuff I tried to date, record, and make notes, and then present to the county attorney, the new county attorney. And that was one of the reasons why Nelson's case was reopened, because there are some glaring inconsistencies and a lot of troubling statements just from the coroner. And the coroner holds the key to this case, which he essentially, in essence, runs this investigation, which is bizarre too. So I think you can form contacts with people. One relationship leads to another. One interview can lead to another. And essentially, in essence, you will find, and make a discovery. The more persistent you are, and I think the more stubborn you are and steadfast you are in doing that. So I think the information is there. It's a matter of how long you are going to work to find that information.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you've really worked hard on this book. Do you feel that it's paying off in helping to bring these cases to light and hopefully reopen some of these cases and solve them?
I think so. I think in many cases, I think the family members just want to know that their loved one hasn't been forgotten. So the smallest goal is to put the information back out there in a way that's respectful, and it's like a homage or a testimonial. I mean, that's something that we can control, or I can control. So when I approach people about doing a story, I let them know that I don't have any grandiose promises about having the case resolved, or about getting a conviction, or presenting enough in the story to bring to someone to trial. Really, I try to bracket all of this and break it down to the smallest component, which is that I can put out a story about your loved one. They're not going to be forgotten. I'll do it in a respectful way. I'll do it in a way that's deferential, and maybe perhaps something will come of it. So the only thing I can control is to write something and write a story that reflects and portrays the victims in a respectful manner. So, and I think that, and that's a goal that I can achieve and attain and fulfill. So.
Right. Well, anything else that you'd like to mention about the book? I know that you have a new book that you're working on a completely different subject.
It's true. Yeah, I was working on one about eccentrics. Eccentrics, called Montana Eccentrics, and I'm looking forward to that. And I was also looking into a series of other cases that I'd like to put together in another book, and probably sometime next year. But this writing is so compelling, and it's so different from other writing. I mean, I love writing about music and art and history, and I love meeting craftsmen and builders and sculptors and taking road trips and doing travel pieces. But something about this type of writing is so compelling. I think one of the reasons why it's like that is because it's indefinite, or it's most stories are finite. You have a deadline. You work with the story, you do your best, and then it's over. But with cases, especially the unsolved cases, they're infinite, or they just they don't have an end or a resolution. So you're always thinking about them. You always want to work on them, and you're always open to working on them again and revising them and adding new information. So I think there's something that's very arresting and gripping about the subject matter and the material and the circumstances that I'll probably be sticking with this for some time to come. And I think the most important thing is that I think some benefit comes out of it. I don't want to just do this to regurgitate bad memories and haunting memories and horrible memories. I do it with a purpose and a function, which is to nudge the case in the right direction and nudge it into the direction that could be satisfying for the family members. So because I don't want to do this and invest all this time and ask the family members to invest all this time and to open up these scars and these wounds and to scratch the scar tissue if it's not if it's not purposeful and deliberate and intentional. So.
All right. And before I let you go, one case comes to mind, and it's the Florence murders in the beauty parlor.
Yeah.
You know, for those unfamiliar with that, share a little bit of the background information. And is there any movement in that case?
Yeah, it was a horrific murder in the Florence salon. And
random, right?
Seemingly, yeah, seemingly so. I mean, there has been a suspect identified in that case, and there has been. It has moved through the courts, and the police have isolated a person or persons of interest, and I mentioned them in the book and their names, and yeah, that case is particularly gruesome and particularly heinous because it involved a triple homicide and triple slaying, and in a part of in a place or location that is very transparent. I think that was the thing that was so shocking, is it's right along Highway 93. It happened in the morning, and the sketch of the suspect was so sinister too, with the top hat and the way he looked and the descriptions of this man. But there have been suspects identified. There's one in particular who's a strong person of interest, and unfortunately, it seems like that one of the victims may have been, inadvertently connected to someone who knew somebody. So you're right. That is, it was a horrible case, and unfortunately, those types of acts and those types of killings are quite rare in Montana and elsewhere. I mean, triple homicides are very rare. So.
Well, on a lighter subject, I'm excited about your new book coming up. And where can our followers find your books and read some of your articles?
Well, I think they could find the book wherever books are sold, and find some stories in the Montana Press Monthly or a variety of different publications around the state, and find the book wherever books are sold. So, but I'm looking forward to the eccentrics one too, because it'll be fun. It'll be fun to smile again too. It's really hard to work on this type of material and talk about this kind of material, because I don't want to slip on a date or a time or a name or a factoid, it's an intense thing, and it's an important thing, but it's only it's just one facet of human nature. It's not a place where I want to dwell or reside. Unfortunately, it's just part of the human condition. So, and good and bad. So I just try to write about a little bit of both. So.
Can you share with us some of the characters you plan to write about?
Sure. As far as the eccentric folks, yeah. Well, there's Merrill Riddick, who's from Phillipsburg, who ran for president a couple of times on his own ticket and campaigned around the country in a Greyhound bus, and so I thought he would be a good one. And we've got a cowboy poet from Miles City named DJ O'Malley, and Lewis Duncan, who was a mayor of Butte. So there's a strange kind of cast of characters, an array of characters, and there's some contemporary ones too. So I'm excited about some of the builders and sculptors and engravers and people doing a lot of lost crafts or strange crafts, So I'm excited about it.
Well, looking forward to that book. Congratulations. And thank you so much, Brian, for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I look forward to seeing you again.